she offered the only food she had to a starving beggar. Little did she know, that simple act of kindness was a character test, and the disheveled man before her was the disguised billionaire CEO of the very company where she worked as a humble cleaner. This isn't just a love story. It's a painful reminder of how cruel the world can be, and how, sometimes, it feels like we've lost all faith in humanity. Have you ever felt invisible, like your kindness doesn't matter? Megan Hunter's journey begins in that exact place of quiet desperation. Get ready to witness the story of a cleaner, Megan Hunter, who had nothing but her integrity, and a man, the secret CEO Mark Gibson, who had everything but faith in people. This is the promise of an emotional journey, an unexpected romance, and a shocking twist that will test the limits of what you believe is fair. The stakes are about to get dramatically higher. Cruelty, betrayal, and humiliation will push her to rock bottom, in a false defeat that will make you believe all is lost. Revenge will be plotted, redemption will be sought, and a life-changing plot twist will alter their destinies forever. If you're ready for a heart-touching story that will grip you until the final second, stay with us. Comment justice if you believe kindness should be rewarded, hit like to show your support for Megan, and subscribe so you don't miss how this drama unfolds. It was just another Tuesday for Megan Hunter, which meant it was a day of quiet, thankless work. The city hummed with an indifferent energy outside the gleaming skyscraper, a world away from her own reality inside. As a cleaner, she was practically invisible, a ghost gliding through corridors of power with a mop and a bucket. Her lunch break was the one small anchor in her day, a brief moment of peace. But today, that peace would be interrupted, leading to a life-changing encounter. Outside, huddled against the biting wind, sat a figure most people went out of their way to ignore. He was a beggar, cloaked in layers of grime and despair, his face a roadmap of hardship. To the executive striding past in their tailored suits, he was less than a shadow, a stain on their perfect world. But Megan saw something different. She saw a human being, a man who was someone's son, perhaps someone's father, now forgotten. That recognition sparked a quiet, powerful decision. Her lunch wasn't much, just a simple sandwich and an apple, barely enough to quell her own hunger after a morning of hard labor. Yet, as she looked at the man, whose shivering seemed to come from deep within his soul, her own needs faded into the background. This wasn't a choice for her, it was an instinct. It was the core of who she was. This simple act was the beginning of an unwitting kindness test, with stakes higher than she could ever imagine. With a gentle smile that didn't ask for thanks, Megan Hunter approached him. She knelt down, her worn-out knees protesting on the cold pavement, and offered him her meal. The man looked up, his eyes, surprisingly sharp and intelligent, filled with a flicker of disbelief. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected to be seen at all. He mumbled a thank you, his voice hoarse from disuse, and accepted the food with a trembling hand, unaware that this was a pivotal moment in a secret drama. This beggar was, in fact, Mark Gibson, the secret CEO of the entire corporation. He was a titan of industry, a man who could buy and sell entire city blocks without a second thought, now disguised in filth. He was conducting a secret investigation, a test of his employees, searching for a single soul who wasn't corrupted by greed. Had almost given up hope, seeing only selfishness day after day. This was a true rich man poor woman scenario, flipped on its head. Mark watched her as she walked away, the warmth of her gesture lingering long after she was gone. Had seen so much ugliness from the people who worked for him, people who had everything. Yet here was a humble cleaner, who had next to nothing, showing more humanity than his entire board of directors combined. It was a shocking surprise, a jolt to his cynical heart, planting the first seed of a complicated romance. He took a bite of the sandwich, the simple taste a stark contrast to the gourmet meals he was accustomed to. For the first time in years, Mark Gibson felt something genuine, a connection that money couldn't buy. He didn't know her name yet, but he knew one thing for sure: this woman was different. This wasn't just about testing employees anymore, something much more personal, much more emotional, had just been set in motion. Megan Hunter's life was a tapestry woven with threads of humility and quiet struggle. She lived in a tiny apartment on the far side of town, the kind of place where the hot water was always a gamble and the walls were paper-thin. Every penny was counted, every expense weighed, but her spirit was anything but impoverished. She navigated her world not with bitterness, but with an unwavering grace that was a source of silent strength, a true testament to her character. Her days were long and physically demanding, starting before sunrise and ending long after the city lights had painted the sky. Yet, she never complained. To her colleagues, she was just the cleaner, but to the few who bothered to look closer, she was a beacon of integrity. She greeted everyone with the same respectful nod, from the CEO she had never met to the security guards who knew her by name. Her kindness wasn't a performance, it was her native language. She dreamed of a different life, of course. A life where she wouldn't have to choose between fixing her leaking faucet and buying a new pair of work shoes. She loved to read, to lose herself in stories of romance and adventure, a stark contrast to her own predictable routine. But these dreams weren't fueled by envy. They were gentle hopes for a future where her hard work might finally lead to a small measure of comfort and security. Her background was simple. She'd been raised to believe that your character was the one thing no one could ever take from you. It was a lesson she'd taken to heart, living by a strict moral code even when no one was watching. This internal compass was what made her act of sharing her lunch not a sacrifice, but a necessity. For Megan, treating another person with dignity wasn't a choice, it was as essential as breathing, a core tenet of her very being. This inherent goodness often made her a target for the more cynical people she worked with. They mistook her kindness for weakness, her quiet nature for a lack of ambition. They couldn't understand why she bothered to be so decent in a world that rewarded ruthlessness. What they failed to see was that Megan's wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in the richness of her own soul, a currency they had long since squandered in their pursuit of more. Even in her exhaustion, she found small joys. The smile of a stranger, the beauty of a sunset viewed from the bus window, the first few pages of a new library book. These were the things that refueled her.
Her life wasn't a drama in the theatrical sense, but an emotional epic of quiet perseverance. A heart-touching story of a woman who held on to her light in a world that seemed determined to extinguish it, completely unaware of the plot twist ahead. She carried the weight of her struggles with a resilience that was truly remarkable. Making ends meet was a constant battle, a tightrope walk she performed every single day. But she never faltered in her belief that people were fundamentally good, that kindness was a boomerang that would eventually find its way back to you. It was a faith that was about to be tested in the most shocking way imaginable. Mark Gibson, the powerful CEO, was a man drowning in his own success. He lived in a penthouse that scraped the clouds, a gilded cage where every view was spectacular, but every interaction fell hollow. Had built an empire from the ground up, but in the process, had become a prisoner of the very greed Head once despised. His world was filled with yes-men and sycophants, their smiles as artificial as the plants in his sterile office lobby. Cynicism had become his armor. Had grown weary of the backstabbing, the petty rivalries, and the insatiable hunger for power that defined his corporate culture. He felt disconnected from the company he had created, a stranger in his own kingdom. He started to wonder if there was anyone left in his organization who valued integrity over profit, who possessed a character that wasn't for sale. This question became an obsession, a gnawing doubt that kept him awake at night. So, he devised a radical plan, a secret social experiment. He would shed his designer suits and his identity as Mark Gibson, the billionaire titan. He would become a nobody, a beggar on the street corner right outside his own headquarters. It was a desperate, unconventional kindness test designed to reveal the true nature of his employees. He wanted to see them when they thought no one of importance was watching, to find a flicker of genuine humanity. His transformation was meticulous. With the help of a Hollywood makeup artist, he became unrecognizable. His hair was matted, his face aged with artificial grime, his hands calloused. He wore rags that smelled of the street, and he adopted a posture of defeat. As he took his place on the cold pavement, he felt a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in decades, he was completely anonymous, just another forgotten soul. The secret CEO was now a beggar. The first few days were a brutal confirmation of his worst fears. He saw the very people who fawned over him in the boardroom walk past him with sneers of disgust. They averted their eyes, clutched their briefcases tighter, and treated him like he was invisible, a piece of human garbage. The experience was more than just humbling. It was a soul-crushing revelation of the toxic culture he had allowed to fester within his own company. He was testing his employees, but the test was also changing him. Stripped of his power and wealth, he was forced to see the world from the very bottom. He felt the sting of contempt, the gnawing ache of hunger, and profound loneliness of being utterly ignored by society. The experience was raw and painful, but it was also sharpening his focus. Clarify his mission to find one single person worthy of his trust. Just as he was about to abandon the entire experiment, convinced that his company was a lost cause rotten to the core, a glimmer of hope appeared. It came in the form of a humble cleaner with kind eyes and a simple sandwich. Her unexpected gesture was a life raft in a sea of cynicism. He didn't know it yet, but Megan Hunter was about to become the focal point of his entire world. A surprise answer to his desperate search. Day after day, the charade continued. Mark, in his beggar's disguise, became a silent observer of the daily parade of arrogance that marched into his building. Employees had promoted, whose bonuses had signed off on, would pass him by without a flicker of acknowledgement. Some would openly mock him, telling him to get a job, their laughter sharp and cruel as it echoed on the cold plaza. Their contempt was a physical thing, a wall he felt pressing in on him. Their behavior was a stark, ugly contrast to the simple humanity shown by Megan Hunter. Every morning, without fail, she would emerge from the building on her break and offer him a warm smile. It wasn't a smile of pity, but one of genuine connection, a simple greeting from one human being to another. That small, consistent gesture felt more valuable to Mark than any multi-million-dollar deal he had ever closed. It was real. She never had much to offer, sometimes just a bottle of water, other times a piece of fruit shed saved. But she always offered something, even if it was just a few kind words about the weather. Stay warm out here, she'd say, her voice soft with sincere concern. While others saw a beggar, a problem be ignored, she saw a person. Her simple decency shone like a lighthouse in the fog of their collective indifference. Mark began to look forward to these brief interactions more than anything else. They were the only moments of authenticity in his day. He learned her name, Megan, from her uniform name tag. He noticed the weariness in her eyes, but also the unshakable kindness in her smile. He was supposed to be the rich man, and she the poor woman, but he was starting to realize that true wealth had nothing to do with the numbers in a bank account. This growing connection did not go unnoticed. Other employees would watch from the gleaming windows of the lobby, whispering and pointing. They saw their lowly cleaner associating with a homeless man and judged her instantly. Their arrogance was blinding. They couldn't comprehend an act of kindness that didn't have a hidden agenda. To them, Megan wasn't just being kind, she was being foolish, staining the company's pristine image with her misplaced compassion. The contrast was a powerful indictment of his company's culture. His ambitious executives, draped in designer clothes, were morally bankrupt. Meanwhile, Megan Hunter, the cleaner they all looked down upon, possessed more character and integrity in her little finger than they had in their entire bodies. This daily drama was more revealing than any corporate report he had ever commissioned, a real-time audit of his company's soul. He found himself captivated by her quiet strength. She was a puzzle he desperately wanted to solve. What made her so different? In a world that encouraged selfishness, how had she managed to preserve such a pure and generous spirit? His initial experiment, a broad test of his employees, had now narrowed its focus. It was no longer about the company. It was all about her. It was all about Megan. The situation was bound to escalate, and it did so in the most public and humiliating way possible. One afternoon, a notoriously cruel manager named Mr. Davies spotted Megan talking to the beggar from his office window. Davies saw it as an affront to his authority and the company's image. He was a man who thrived on intimidation, and he decided to make an example of her, to put the lowly cleaner back in her place for all to see. He stormed out into the plaza, his face a thunderous mask of fury. Hunter, What do you think you're doing?" He boomed, his voice dripping with contempt. All heads turned. The bustling plaza fell silent as employees gathered to watch the unfolding drama. Megan, startled, stood up, her face flushing with embarrassment. She was being publicly humiliated. And the shame was a physical blow, a shocking and unwarranted attack on her character. I was just talking to him. Sir, she stammered, trying to maintain her composure. Davies sneered, looking from her to the disguised Mark Gibson with utter disgust. You are fraternizing with this filth on company property. You are a disgrace to this organization. He spat, his words like venom. He was intentionally cruel, enjoying the power trip, the feeling of crushing someone he deemed insignificant beneath his heel. But then, something shifted in Megan. The initial shock gave way to a quiet, steely resolve. She looked Mr. Davies directly in the eye, her voice no longer trembling, but clear and firm. His name is Mark, she said, giving the disguised CEO a name she had invented for him. And he's a human being. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, sir, no matter their circumstances. It was a simple statement, but it resonated with profound moral authority. A stunned silence fell over the crowd. No one had ever dared to stand up to Davies before, least of all a cleaner. Her calm defense of her actions, her unwavering belief in basic human decency, was a shocking act of rebellion. From his position on the ground, Mark Gibson watched in awe. He felt a surge of admiration so powerful it almost made him forget his role. He was witnessing true courage, and it was a heart-touching and life-changing moment for him. Davies, enraged at being challenged, was momentarily speechless. He pointed a trembling finger at her. You are on very thin ice. Hunter, one more mistake and you're out. He threatened before turning on his heel and storming back into the building, leaving Megan standing alone in a sea of silent, judging eyes. She had been publicly shamed, her job threatened, all for a simple act of compassion. What one word would you use to describe Mr. Davies' attitude right now? Comment below. Megan held her head high as she walked back inside, though her heart was pounding in her chest. The experience had been deeply painful, a brutal reminder of her place in the corporate hierarchy. She had been humiliated, but she wasn't broken. She knew she had done the right thing. But she couldn't shake the feeling that this confrontation was just the beginning, a dark foreshadowing of the revenge her manager might seek. Mark Gibson was profoundly shaken by what he had just witnessed. Megan's courage in the face of such public humiliation had solidified his admiration for her, but it had also raised the stakes of his experiment. He needed to know with absolute certainty if her integrity was unshakable. He decided to orchestrate one final, definitive kindness test, one that would pit her character against the universal temptation of money, a test of true redemption. Later that day, knowing Megan's cleaning route, he accidentally dropped a thick, leather wallet near her cleaning cart in a deserted hallway. It wasn't just any wallet, it was his own, filled with thousands of dollars in cash and credit cards bearing the name Mark Gibson. He left it lying there, a deliberate trap, and watched from a hidden security camera feed, his heart pounding with a mixture of hope and anxiety. Megan discovered the wallet a few minutes later. She stopped her cart, her eyes widening at the sight of it. She picked it up, her rough, work-worn hands holding an object that likely contained more money than she earned in 6 months. The hallway was empty. There were no witnesses. This was a moment of absolute privacy, a crossroad where her integrity would either stand firm or crumble under the weight of her own financial struggles. For a brief moment, she hesitated, flicking through the crisp $100 bills. The camera zoomed in on her face, capturing a flicker of conflict. Mark held his breath. He could see the silent calculation, the temptation warring with her conscience. This was it, the ultimate rich man, poor woman dilemma. The money could solve so many of her problems. It could be a life-changing windfall, a ticket out of her difficult life. But the moment was fleeting. Her expression hardened with resolve. Without a second thought, she snapped the wallet shut, tucked it securely into her apron pocket, and pushed her cart directly towards the building's security office. There was no more hesitation, no looking over her shoulder. Her moral compass had pointed true north, unwavering in the face of overwhelming temptation. It was an immediate, decisive action. Mark watched on the monitor, a slow smile spreading across his face, followed by a wave of emotion so intense it took him by surprise. It was a feeling of profound relief and a deep, burgeoning affection. She hadn't just passed his test, she had obliterated it. Her character was pure gold, a rare and precious commodity in his world of tarnished souls. This was more than a secret identity game. It was becoming a love story. Be honest now. If you were in her shoes, would you have returned the wallet? Let us know in the comments. She handed the wallet to the head of security, explaining where she found it, her only concern being that the owner, a Mr. Mark Gibson, would get it back safely. She had no idea she had just handed the wallet back to its rightful owner via a third party. As she walked away, completely unaware of the significance of her actions, Mark knew his search was over. He had found the one person he was looking for, and his life was about to take a shocking and irreversible plot twist. The wallet test was a turning point for Mark Gibson. It was a final piece of evidence he needed, the undeniable proof that Megan Hunter's goodness was not an act, but the very essence of her being. Watching her walk away from a fortune without a second thought did more than just impress him. It began to dismantle the walls of cynicism he had spent years building around his own heart. He was moved in a way he hadn't been in a very long time. He started to see the world and his role in it through a different lens. His undercover mission, which began as a cold, detached social experiment for testing employees, was now intensely personal. He found himself thinking about Megan constantly, not as a subject of his study, but as a woman whose spirit captivated him. He was drawn to her genuine nature, her quiet resilience, her simple, unshakable integrity. It was a heart-touching and profound realization. His days as a beggar became less about observation and more about anticipation. He looked forward to her daily visits, the warmth of her smile, the brief conversations that were the only real human connection he felt. He was a secret CEO, a man of immense power. He felt more himself sitting on that cold pavement, talking to a humble cleaner, than he ever did in his own boardroom. It was a shocking paradox that he was only just beginning to understand. This blossoming affection began to chip away at his hardened exterior. Had spent so long surrounded by people who wanted something from him that had forgotten what it felt like to be with someone who simply gave, without expecting anything in return. Megan's kindness was unconditional, a pure and selfless force that was slowly healing his jaded view of humanity. He was starting to believe again, and it was all because of her. The rich man, poor woman dynamic felt increasingly absurd to him. He had all the money in the world, but he was emotionally bankrupt. She had next to nothing, but she possessed a richness of character that he now saw as the ultimate prize. He realized that he wasn't just observing her anymore, he was falling for her. This unexpected romance was terrifying and exhilarating all at once, a plot twist in his own carefully controlled life. He knew he couldn't maintain his secret identity for much longer. The game had become too real, the feelings too strong. The thought of deceiving her, of her not knowing who he truly was, started to weigh heavily on him. He felt a desperate urge to reveal himself, to thank her not just for passing his test, but for saving him from his own cynicism. He was experiencing a personal redemption he hadn't even known he was seeking. But before he figured out how to unravel the complicated web he had woven, external forces were already conspiring against Megan. His social experiment had set in motion a chain of events that was about to bring her quiet life crashing down. While he was finding his humanity, others were plotting to exploit her kindness, and a terrible drama was about to unfold, threatening to destroy the very person he had come to admire so deeply. In the sterile, competitive environment of the office, genuine kindness is often viewed with suspicion, and so it was with Megan Hunter. Her simple, compassionate interactions with the beggar did not go unnoticed, particularly by a jealous co-worker named Sarah. Sarah was ambitious and ruthless, a woman who saw the corporate ladder not as something to be climbed, but as a battleground where others had to be pushed off for her to get ahead. Sarah had always resented Megan's quiet dignity. She couldn't stand the fact that some of the senior staff, tired of the usual office politics, would occasionally comment on the cleaner's pleasant demeanor. In her mind, kindness was a weakness, and she saw Megan's compassion for the homeless man as a potential vulnerability, a weapon she could use to her own advantage. She began to watch them, her mind twisting their innocent interactions into something sinister. The plotting began subtly. Sarah would make snide remarks in the break room, planting seeds of doubt about Megan. "It's a bit unprofessional, don't you think?" she'd say to anyone who would listen. "Spending so much time with that man. It's a security risk, really." She framed her jealousy as corporate concern, cleverly manipulating her colleagues' perceptions and painting Megan's kindness as a dangerous and naive flaw. She saw an opportunity for revenge, though for what offense, it was unclear. Perhaps it was revenge against a world that didn't instantly reward her own brand of aggressive ambition. Or maybe it was a petty act of cruelty against someone whose simple goodness made her feel inadequate. Whatever the reason, Sarah began to meticulously document every time Megan spoke to the disguised Mark, building a case against her. Mark, still undercover, was completely oblivious to this insidious subplot unfolding within the office walls. He was so focused on his connection with Megan, on the emotional and heart-touching journey he was on, that he failed to see the danger brewing. He was a secret CEO, a master of strategy, yet he was blind to the simple, venomous office politics that were about to have a devastating impact on the woman he was growing to love. Sarah's plan was simple and cruel. She would escalate her fabricated concerns, moving from break-room gossip to a formal complaint. She knew that the manager, Mr. Davies, already had a vendetta against Megan after their public confrontation. Sarah saw him not as a boss, but as a pawn in her game. She would feed his anger, validate his prejudice, and use his authority to eliminate the person she saw as an irritating Gutatusha's rival. The trap was being set. A web of lies, fueled by jealousy and ambition, was slowly closing in on the unsuspecting Megan Hunter. Her greatest virtue, her unwavering kindness, was being twisted into a weapon that would be used against her. A terrible drama was on the horizon, one that would lead to a shocking injustice and push Megan into a pit of despair, all because of a co-worker's petty grudge and a plot for revenge. The moment the strike arrived, with her carefully fabricated notes in hand, the rival co-worker, Sarah, requested a private meeting with the cruel manager, Mr. Davies. She presented her evidence with an air of grave concern, framing Megan's daily acts of kindness as a severe breach of company protocol and a major security risk. She painted a picture of a reckless employee whose bizarre attachment to a homeless man was making others feel unsafe. Davies listened intently, his prejudice against Megan making him a receptive audience. Sarah's words were exactly the ammunition he needed to justify his own dislike for the cleaner who had dared to defy him. He didn't question the report, he embraced it. The idea that Megan was a security risk was a perfect, professional-sounding excuse he needed to exact his revenge for the public humiliation he had suffered at her hands. "She brings him company property water, sometimes food," Sarah lied, embellishing the story to make it sound more severe. Who knows what else she's telling him? He could be casing the building for all we know, and she's his inside source. The accusation was baseless and absurd, but it was delivered with such conviction that Davies accepted it as fact. The plot was working perfectly, a shocking betrayal built on a foundation of pure fiction. Without conducting any real investigation, or even speaking to Megan, management made a swift and brutal decision. They chose to believe the lies of an ambitious co-worker and a vengeful manager over the flawless work record of a long-time employee. They saw Megan not as a person, but as a liability, a problem to be disposed of as quickly and quietly as possible. Her fate was sealed in that meeting, a victim of corporate politics at its most vicious. The charge was clear. Megan Hunter's interactions with the homeless man were deemed unprofessional, inappropriate, and a direct threat to corporate security. It was a shocking and deeply unjust verdict. Her simple act of humanity had been twisted into a crime. The very qualities that Mark Gibson, the secret CEO, had come to admire as her greatest assets were now being used as the official reason for her downfall. This moment represents the ultimate false defeat in her story. The audience, who has seen her unwavering integrity and kindness, now watches as the system she serves so faithfully turns on her with brutal efficiency. The injustice is infuriating. It feels like all hope is lost, that in this cold corporate world, goodness is not only unrewarded but actively punished. The drama has reached its most heart-wrenching peak. The trap had been sprung, The lies had found fertile ground, and the wheels of a terrible injustice were now in motion. Megan Hunter, completely unaware of conspiracy against her, was about to walk into the office for what she thought was just another day of work. Instead, she was walking into an ambush, one that would cost her everything and leave her heartbroken, all because of a co-worker's jealousy and a manager's petty quest for revenge. The summons came without warning. Megan was called into Mr. Davies' office in the middle of her shift, the request delivered with a cold formality that sent a chill down her spine. As she walked down the polished corridor, she felt a sense of dread, but she could never prepare herself for the devastating blow that was about to land. Waiting in the office were Davies and an HR representative, their faces grim and unreadable. There was no discussion, no chance to defend herself. Davies informed her, in a flat, merciless tone, that her employment was being terminated, effective immediately. He cited the security risk and unprofessional conduct that Sarah had fabricated. Megan was stunned into silence, the words not making any sense. She was being fired? For what? For showing a shred of kindness to a man on the street? The shock was so profound. It felt like the floor had fallen out from under her. She was left completely heartbroken and confused. She tried to explain, to tell her side of the story, but they wouldn't listen. She was talked over, shut down, and treated like a criminal. They handed her a box to clear out her small locker, and within minutes, she was being escorted out of the building by security, past the staring eyes of her colleagues. The humiliation was absolute, a public shaming that stripped her of her dignity and her livelihood in one fell swoop. As she stood on the curb, clutching the small box that contained the remnants of her work life, a devastating thought took hold. It was her fault. Her act of compassion, the one thing she believed in so deeply, had cost her everything. The world she had tried to navigate with integrity had just confirmed her worst fears that kindness was a liability. The feeling of unjust defeat was crushing, a life-changing moment of profound despair. This was the lowest point of her life. The job wasn't just a source of income, it was the structure of her existence, the one thing that gave her a sense of stability. Now it was gone. She looked over at the spot where the beggar usually sat, but he wasn't there. It felt like a final, cruel twist of the knife. The very person she had sacrificed her job for had vanished, leaving her utterly alone with the consequences of her actions. The walk to the bus stop was a blur of tears and disbelief. The city that had once seemed full of quiet promise now felt hostile and unforgiving. The plot twist was a cruel one. Her best quality had led to her worst nightmare. She had no idea about the secret identity of the man she helped, the co-worker's plot for revenge, or the manager's bruised ego. All she knew was that she had been punished for being good, a heart-touching tragedy that felt utterly final. Megan Hunter's simple life had been shattered. She went home to her tiny apartment. The termination letter crumpled in her hand and fell into a state of shock. The injustice of it all was a heavy blanket, suffocating her hope. She believed her story was over, that she had lost the game. She had no way of knowing that this horrible ending was actually the brutal, necessary catalyst for a truly shocking new beginning. The next day, Mark Gibson returned to his post on the street, eager to see Megan's warm smile. But she never appeared. He waited, a strange sense of unease creeping over him as the hours ticked by. Her absence was a void, a missing piece of his day that left him feeling empty and anxious. He tried to brush it off, telling himself she was probably just sick, but a nagging feeling in his gut told him something was wrong. Something was terribly wrong. His unease grew into full-blown worry. He couldn't shake the image of her confrontation with Davies. Had the manager followed through on his threat? The thought sent a jolt of cold fear through him. He realized with a sickening lurch that his social experiment, his detached observation, might have had real-world consequences for the one person he had come to care about. He had been a passive observer in a drama where he should have been a protector. Unable to wait any longer, Mark made his way to a public library, accessed a computer, and logged into his company's internal network using a secure, untraceable connection. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he pulled up the employee records. When he typed in Megan Hunter, the result hit him like a physical punch. Status terminated. The word glared at him from the screen, a digital confirmation of his worst fears. He dug deeper, his heart pounding in his chest. He accessed the HR files and found the termination report, co-signed by Davies and citing the fabricated security risk complaint filed by Sarah. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. He saw the whole sordid plot: Sarah's jealousy, Davies' revenge, and Megan, the innocent victim caught in the crossfire. And he, the secret CEO, was the unwitting cause of it all. She was fired because of him. A wave of guilt and fury washed over him. His grand experiment had backfired horribly. He had set out to test his employee's character. But in doing so, he had created the perfect storm to destroy the best person among them. He had been so focused on his secret identity game, so caught up in his growing feelings, that he had failed to see the danger he had put her in. The realization was a crushing weight on his conscience. The game was over. This was no longer about testing employees or finding a single good soul. This was about a profound injustice done to a remarkable woman, an injustice he had inadvertently caused. The beggar on the street vanished in that moment, replaced by the powerful, ruthless CEO he had been before, but now with a new, singular purpose. A purpose fueled by guilt and a surprising depth of feeling for Megan. He walked out of that library a changed man. The cynicism was gone, replaced by a white-hot determination. He had allowed his company's toxic culture to harm someone pure, and he would not let it stand. His quest for redemption was no longer just about his own soul, it was about hers. He had to fix this. He had to find her and make things right, no matter the cost. A shocking revenge was about to be unleashed. The transformation was immediate and total. Mark Gibson walked into his penthouse, shedding the beggar's rags like a second skin. He showered, shaved, and donned one of his most expensive, immaculately tailored suits. When he looked in the mirror, it was a powerful CEO, the titan of industry, who stared back, but his eyes held a new fire, a cold, dangerous glint that had been absent for years. He was no longer playing a role. He was on a mission. He strode into his corporate headquarters the next morning, and the effect was electrifying. Employees who had ignored him on the street now scrambled to get out of his way, their faces a mixture of awe and terror. He ignored their fawning greetings, his gaze fixed straight ahead. He called an emergency meeting with his entire executive team and the head of human resources. The message was clear: the king was back, and he was not happy. His first order of business was to launch an immediate and thorough investigation into Megan Hunter's dismissal. He made it clear that he was personally overseeing it and that he wanted every email, every security log, and every witness statement on his desk by the end of the day. The executives, stunned by his sudden, intense focus on a low-level cleaner, scurried to comply, the fear of his wrath palpable in the room. Mark's guilt was a powerful motivator, but was accompanied by a surprising depth of feeling for Megan that went far beyond mere admiration. He replayed every smile, every kind word, every selfless gesture in his mind. The thought of the pain and confusion she must be feeling because of his actions was a knife in his gut. This wasn't just about corporate justice. Anymore, this was personal. It was the start of a true, albeit unconventional, love story. He worked with a ruthless efficiency, his mind, once clouded by cynicism, now crystal clear. He was a brilliant strategist, and he turned his full intellectual arsenal on uncovering the truth. He bypassed the usual channels, using his executive power to get the unvarnished facts. He felt a grim satisfaction as the pieces of the puzzle came together, confirming Sarah's lies and Davies' abuse of power. The evidence was damning. The disguise was gone, but the man who had been the beggar remained. He had seen the ugly underbelly of his own creation, and now, as the CEO, he was in a position to purge the poison. He realized his undercover experiment hadn't been a failure after all. It had been a painful but necessary rebirth, forcing him to see the truth not just about his employees, but about himself. This was his chance for redemption. As he assembled a file against Davies and Sarah, he felt no joy, only a cold resolve. His priority was not the revenge he was about to enact, but righting the wrong done to Megan. Every action he took was driven by the memory of her kindness and the sting of his own culpability. He was about to bring the full weight of his power down on those who had hurt her, and would be a shocking and unforgettable display of corporate justice. The stage was set for the final act of this corporate drama. Mark summoned Mr. Davies and Sarah to the main boardroom. When they entered, they were met with a chilling sight. The entire executive team was seated around a massive table, with Mark Gibson at its head, his expression as hard and unyielding as granite. The file containing the investigation's findings was placed squarely in front of him. The air was thick with tension. This wasn't a meeting, it was a tribunal. Sarah and Davies exchanged a nervous glance, still unaware of the true nature of their predicament. They likely assumed it was about a minor HR issue. Mark let the silence stretch, watching them squirm, before he began. He started by speaking about the company's core values: integrity, respect, and character. He spoke with a passion that stunned executives, who were used to him talking only about profit margins and market share. Then, he turned his icy gaze directly on them. "We had an employee named Megan Hunter," he said, his voice dangerously calm. He recounted her flawless work record, her years of loyal service. Then, he detailed the reasons for her termination: unprofessional conduct and being a security risk. He looked at Sarah. "A complaint, I believe, that you initiated." Sarah's face went pale as she realized this was far more serious than she had imagined. With methodical precision, Mark dismantled their lies one by one. He played security footage showing Megan's harmless interactions. He brought up emails between Sarah and Davies that hinted at their collusion. The final, shocking blow came when he played the audio from Davies' public humiliation of Megan in the plaza. The manager's cruel, bullying words filled the silent boardroom, his own voice condemning him. The deceit was exposed for everyone to see. "You conspired," Mark said, his voice rising with controlled fury, "to terminate an employee based on lies, all to settle a petty grudge and advance a pathetic agenda. You used your power to crush a good person, someone who showed more character in a single day than either of you have shown in your entire careers." The humiliation in the room was palpable, a just revenge for the pain they had inflicted on an innocent woman. The executive team looked on, horrified. They were witnessing a masterclass in corporate justice, a public shaming that was both brutal and righteous. Sarah began to cry, while Davy sat in stunned, ashen-faced silence. They had been so certain of their power, so confident in their deceit, that they never imagined it could all come crashing down on them in such a spectacular and public fashion. It was a shocking plot twist in their own careers. Mark's final words were delivered with the finality of a judge's sentence. "You are both terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building. Your careers are over." He closed the file, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silent room. The drama was over, justice had been served. But for Mark, the most important part of his mission had just begun: finding Megan. With the internal rottenness now purged from his company, Mark Gibson turned his full attention to the most critical part of his mission: finding Megan Hunter. He felt an urgency that bordered on desperation. It wasn't enough to clear her name within the company walls. He needed to find her, to look her in the eye and apologize for the unimaginable pain his reckless experiment had caused. This was his personal quest for redemption. He deployed the vast resources at his disposal with a singular focus. He hired the best private investigators his money could buy, tasking them with finding a single, low-income cleaner in a city of millions. He gave them her picture, her last known address, every piece of information he had. "Find her," he commanded, the weight of his guilt evident in his voice. "I don't care what it takes." Days turned into a week, and the search yielded nothing. Megan seemed to have vanished. She had left her old apartment, disconnected her phone, and disappeared without a trace. Mark grew increasingly frantic. The thought of her out there, alone and struggling, believing she'd been punished for her own goodness, was a torment he couldn't bear. This search was becoming more than just an apology tour. It was a desperate race to mend a heart he had allowed to be broken. He couldn't sleep. He could barely eat. During the day, he was a powerful CEO, restructuring his company's culture from the top down, instituting new policies that rewarded character and integrity. But at night, he was just a man haunted by the face of a kind woman. His search for her was relentless, a heart-touching testament to the profound impact she had had on him. This was no longer just a rich man, poor woman story. It was a love story, and he had lost his leading lady. The investigators finally caught a break. They traced a final paycheck she had cashed and found a lead to a small, run-down motel on the outskirts of the city. Mark didn't hesitate. He didn't send an assistant or a representative. He went himself, his heart pounding with a mixture of hope and dread. He was about to come face to face with the woman whose life he had inadvertently turned upside down. As he drove the motel, he rehearsed what he would say, but the words felt hollow and inadequate. How could he possibly explain the secret identity, the elaborate test, the shocking series of events that led to her ruin? How could he apologize for a wound so deep? He knew that no amount of money or corporate power could fix what he had broken. All he could offer was the truth, and hope it would be enough. He pulled up to the dreary motel, his sleek, black car looking completely out of place. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the encounter. This was it, the moment of truth. He was about to confront the consequences of his actions, to beg for forgiveness from the humble cleaner who had taught him the meaning of true wealth. The final, most emotional act of this incredible drama was about to begin. Mark found Megan's room number and knocked on the door, his hand trembling slightly. When she opened it, her eyes widened in shock and confusion. She saw not the beggar she had helped, but a man who looked like he owned the world, dressed in a suit that cost more than her entire life savings. She didn't recognize him at first. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice cautious, tinged with the weariness of her recent ordeal. "Megan," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "My name is Mark Gibson." He saw the flicker of recognition as she remembered the name from the wallet, but the confusion only deepened. He knew he couldn't explain everything there in that dingy motel hallway. "Please," he said gently, "will you come with me? I promise I will explain everything. I need to right a terrible wrong." Hesitantly, intrigued and with nothing left to lose, she agreed. He didn't take her to a fancy restaurant or a sterile office. He drove her back to the one place that represented both her humiliation and his deception to company headquarters. He led her into the grand lobby, where employees stopped and stared, whispering in disbelief as they saw the powerful Soe escorting their fired cleaner. Mark ignored them all, his focus entirely on Megan. This grand, public gesture was just the beginning. He convened an all-hands meeting in the main atrium. In front of hundreds of employees, with Megan standing by his side, Mark Gibson began to speak. "Many of you know Megan Hunter," he started, his voice booming through the silent space. "And many of you know she was recently fired. What you don't know is that it was all based on a lie, and that I am the one responsible for the circumstances that led to it." A wave of shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. Then came the most shocking revelation of all. "For the past few weeks, I have not been working from my office. I have been sitting on the pavement outside, disguised as a homeless man." He let the words sink in. The collective gasp was audible. He was the beggar. The secret CEO then publicly fired the deceitful manager, Davies, and a rival, Sarah, recounting their conspiracy for all to hear. It was a stunning act of revenge and justice. He then turned to Megan, his expression softening. "I was conducting a test of this company's character," he explained, his voice now directed only at her. "And in a company full of greed and selfishness, you were the only one who passed." He detailed her every act of kindness, from the sandwich she shared to the wallet she returned. He held her up as a standard, the moral compass the entire corporation would now follow. In a move that left everyone speechless, he didn't just offer Megan her old job back, he promoted her. Effective immediately, Megan Hunter will be heading a new department of corporate and social responsibility, with an executive salary and a position on my senior leadership team. It was a life-changing promotion, a stunning reversal of fortune, moving her from the bottom of the ladder to the very top in a single, breathtaking moment. With the entire company watching, their faces a canvas of shock and awe, Mark Gibson did something no one ever expected. He stepped closer to Megan Hunter, taking her hand. The grand corporate gesture was finished. This final part was deeply personal. He looked directly into her eyes, letting the whole world see the vulnerability and sincerity on his face. This wasn't the CEO speaking to an employee. This was a man speaking to the woman who had changed his life. "I set out on a kindness test, but it was I who was truly tested," he confessed, his voice resonating with emotion. "You taught me that true wealth isn't in our stock price or our market share. It's in our character," he declared, his voice unwavering. "Megan Hunter's character is this company's greatest and most valuable asset. If you believe her character is her greatest strength, hit the like button as a sign of respect for her integrity. He then took a deep breath, laying his heart bare for all to see. But this is about more than just a job, Megan. In watching you, in seeing your unwavering goodness in a world that had made me cynical, I found something I had long given up on. I fell in love with you. The confession hung in the air, a shocking, heart-touching climax to their incredible story. The cleaner and the secretoid was the ultimate romance, a true love born from the most unlikely of circumstances. Megan stood, tears streaming down her face, a mix of disbelief, vindication, and blossoming joy. The beggar she had shown compassion to, the man she had defended at the cost of her job, was not only the powerful Sylph, but was now confessing his love for her in front of everyone. Her simple act of kindness, sharing her small lunch, hadn't led to ruin after all. It had led her to this, to a life-changing destiny she could never have dreamed of. The atrium erupted in applause. It was a cathartic release for everyone who had witnessed the injustice and now saw this incredible redemption. This wasn't just a corporate announcement. It was a finale of a real-life drama that had unfolded before their eyes. The rich man, poor woman tale had found its fairy tale ending, not through magic, but through profound power of human decency. A true love story for the ages. Mark Gibson, the cynical billionaire, had found his redemption not in his wealth, but in the love of a humble cleaner who reminded him how to be human. And Megan Hunter, the invisible woman, had discovered her worth was not defined by her job title, but by the strength of her spirit that had captured the heart of a king. It was a powerful plot twist that proved kindness is never, ever wasted. Their journey was a testament to the fact that a single, small act of goodness can set in motion a chain of events so powerful it can dismantle lies, inspire a jaded heart, and forge a love story that will be told for years to come. It was more than a surprise, it was a miracle, a heart-touching, life-changing testament to the enduring power of a compassionate soul. In the end, this story leaves us with a powerful truth: kindness is not weakness. It is the most profound strength we possess, a quiet force that could dismantle empires of greed and build a future we can all believe in. Megan's simple act of sharing a meal wasn't just charity, it was a spark that ignited a revolution of the heart. If you also believe that one small act of goodness can change the world, then you found your place. This channel is more than just stories, it's a community for people like you. Subscribe and join us in celebrating the best of humanity. Now, let's create a wave of positivity together. Like this video as a signal to the world that kindness matters. Comment below with the exact moment and the story that touched you the most. And share this video with one person who needs a reminder that their goodness is powerful. And while you wait for our next story, know that our channel is a treasure chest of emotional journeys just like this one. Explore our older videos and discover other unforgettable tales of hope and redemption. To make sure you don't miss out on the incredible stories we have coming, activate the notification bell. You won't want to be left out of the next emotional roller coaster.